latest in a legacy of movies that seem to be a little bit more style over substance, but might honestly find a pretty dedicated audience. But currently it is mostly getting trashed within an inch of its life from critics and not received much better from the general audiences, and while I don't hate it as much as some people clearly seem to, it really is just a disappointing situation to me. Which is really unfortunate because the teaser trailer paired with the fact that this was Jordan Peele's production company had me quite interested. The base premise of him is that Cameron Cade, college hotshot football player, gets the chance to play for the team he's been dreaming of being a part of since he was a kid, the Saviors. But after suffering a pretty severe blow to the head, his chances look like they might be over until his idol Isaiah White invites him to train at his personal compound to prove he has what it takes. Where all is not what it seems. Too intense? Too weird a delivery? Okay. Really solid setup here, unfortunate execution. Thematically is trying to take a look at the idealization of sports stars, particularly football players, the way some people can view the game as a religion, so these top players are kind of like gods, except they expect you to perform in a way to match that, where the power you have as one of those stars extends only as far as they're willing to allow. How that religion in the game almost becomes an extension of Sunday church service. Really interesting stuff, so many ways that can be approached. The movie itself is actually adapted from a Blacklist script, which are popular screenplays that haven't been adapted yet, so like Little Miss Sunshine, Juno, Spotlight, The Menu, and more recently Lurker, which is going to be streaming, I believe, on the 10th of October, were all movies on different years' blacklists. Not always winners though, that's also where Don't Worry Darling came from, if you want to see me compare the script to the movie in that. The video here. As I mentioned, this was produced by Jordan Peele's production company Monkey Paw, who notoriously lost out on the rights to Weapons, so I can only imagine how the critical reception for him feels after seeing how well beloved Weapons ended up being. And while a lot of those blacklist screenplays don't really change much from the page to the screen, with a lot of those writers going on to be the ones directing the movies themselves, him is very different in a lot of ways. Not just in name, where the title was actually changed from GOAT, as in greatest of all time, to him, but in a way a lot of the events play out, and specifically very much the ending. Very different ending. And I honestly think with the right tone of execution, that screenplay ending could have been a lot more satisfying and dark in some ways than what we got, but I do appreciate the commitment to the insanity, which we will touch on later. Unfortunately, so much of this movie ends up feeling like an incredibly well-directed and edited music video in terms of the style, except it lasts for almost 2 hours. Wow, that's competing with the length of some Fall Out Boy music videos. A little less 16 Candles, more like a little less plot and more song, boys. This just ends up being another movie where so many of the individual pieces really work. They're really strong. They're great. I love the story that they're aiming to tell. It just doesn't come together right. The acting is solid, especially out of Marlon Wayans. He really navigates the uncomfortable enigma role so well, juggling a lot of different tones and emotions. Tyriq Withers does the best he can with what he's given. Julia Fox just comes in with a level of chaos similar to Aubrey Plaza and Megalopolis. Some cool comparisons between what American football is today compared to what things were in eras past, the evolution of human entertainment. In the end, it does just feel like a misuse of the premise, and for all the catchphrases and on-the-nose statements that they're gonna have throughout the movie, it still doesn't feel like it's going that deep into what it's exploring. In my opinion, I have seen some people say the opposite, and that this movie isn't actually being judged for what it is, it's being judged on what people want it to be. I don't think I'm doing that, but let me know what you guys are thinking down below if you've seen the movie. So yeah, I won't judge this on not being scary enough, for not being the type of story that some people assumed it was gonna be from the trailers. I'm just kinda gonna judge it for being a mishmash of visually intense scenes that don't always feel like they flow from one to the next. I'll also touch on some of what the script was doing that ends up being completely different from the finished product. But first, today's sponsor Incogni can make you feel like you're as secretive as whatever's going on in this movie. Sadly, it is easier than ever for people to look up your personal information. And every day, data brokers are online collecting and selling that information to a variety of different people. Some just trying to make a quick buck with a scam, but others might be looking for more targeted ways to affect you and your family. Especially in the US, where people searching profiles are constantly popping up with detailed personal profiles for people to exploit. These profiles make it so much easier to target people for the scams they're most likely to fall for, like people in debt looking for solutions, single parents looking for help, and so much more. You might feel confident spotting these scams as they come along, but can you say the same for the more vulnerable members of your family, especially now that we have like AI voices in the mix? Incogni can help put a stop to this by scanning the web for your information and sending requests on your behalf to have it removed from these sites. And if you happen to notice your information somewhere before Incogni has a chance to get to it, you can just send in a custom request to have it removed, and they'll take care of that that back and forth. Most of the time though, you don't have to do a thing because they are constantly looking for this information on your behalf and handling any objections. And data removal can be that easy for you too. Just make an account, give Incogni the okay to work on your behalf, and they'll just keep you updated as they handle all the back and forth. So check out Incogni.com/Amanda or use code Amanda to get 60% off an annual plan and let Incogni take care of the headaches of data removal. Okay, so now we are diving into full spoilers and plot breakdown. You've been warned. Leave if you don't want to know anything about this movie other than what I've already said. We are not spoilers. Spoilers! We start with a young boy obsessively watching his favorite player on the Saviors, Isaiah White, win them the game, but snaps his leg to do so. While his dad forces him to watch, saying that's what real men do, they sacrifice to achieve. Instantly setting up an environment that encourages pushing your body past the breaking point for the game that they see his future as one of, if not the great.
Who are you?
I'm him!
Who are you?
I'm him! Manta!
Also setting up that religious aspect. Their team is the Saviors, they're playing the Masons, which is like the Freemasons, so we're basically getting religious institution versus cult-like organization. The idea of God, family, football, or reversing it to be football, family, God is mentioned a lot in this movie, and we literally see that they have a shrine dedicated to the team and their family, all in the same area. This is how much it matters to this family. The candles also flicker here as if something supernatural has occurred. So first, after that injury, it kind of seems like Isaiah's out of the game now forever, and he might just be trying to groom the next great once we get to the main part of the story, except for the fact that he then goes on to win multiple championships after his femur broke through his leg. Should have been an absolute career ender, but he somehow managed to bounce back better. We jump through his star-studded career of like 8 Super Bowl wins until landing in the present with questions of whether or not he's going to go one more year or let himself be replaced. In comes Cameron Cade, college football star, the guy everyone's theorizing as the next great. At this point, we know that his dad passed away and he was the one who really instilled that desire for Cam to go pro as a child. And everything is coming down to the Combine, the event where players get to show off their skills to NFL scouts. Which is really Cam's to lose at this point, which he does after he gets bashed in the head by someone in a goat costume. So instantly got the cult vibes from that, and it seems like Cam's career might be over until his manager Tom calls to let him know that Isaiah White wants to personally train him to give him another chance to prove his skills, instantly setting us up with a handful of options. The big one is that Isaiah just wants to mess with him so he can't be replaced, but he wouldn't really need to bring Cam out to his compound for that, considering he just got a head injury and blew the scouting opportunities. Or he actually wants to know if Cam has what it takes. Can he actually step into that godlike role on the team? And with that option being the more likely, it's just a matter of how we're getting there. How far are we going to push Cam? What's going on? What kind of, is there something sinister happening? I, again, assumed from the beginning that it was something to do with like a cult or something behind the scenes, because again, he got hit in the head by a guy wearing a goat costume. And that blow to the head also gives us a little bit of an unreliable narrator situation with Cam. So after he gets hit, we can't really trust that everything he's seeing is real, and he does start to see things. But again, because we, and not Cam, saw the guy in the goat costume, a lot of the stuff is probably gonna be real. In the screenplay, he doesn't actually hit his head until after he gets to the training compound, so nothing weird starts happening until that hit, so there is more of a debate over whether or not something is actually happening. There's also other elements pointing to secret organizations or cult. We got Cam getting a text about an address that is 1717 Masonic Avenue. 1717 is when modern Freemasonry was recognized. They've been linked to occult practices, so definitely feels like they're dropping those hint for some kind of secret organization. And the way they display those Ultra fans really seem to play into this. When Cam gets to the compound, he's harassed by what can only be considered disciples of Isaiah, not willing to accept Cam as their new god, not remotely shying away from those religious comparisons with signs that literally say deity on them, and Isaiah is the chosen one. So not being remotely subtle here about fans, stan culture, obsession, how people can simultaneously worship celebrities and players while also holding them to significantly higher expectations and standards. And I don't mean the kind of standards you should expect from people. I mean, like, if you step a toe out of the line in a way that they don't like, they will come down on you, even though you are supposed to be, they see you as above them. It's a weird dichotomy, and it's played to the extreme here. They literally look like they have the rage virus. But Isaiah's pretty chill once Cam gets inside, other than the compound being super weird. I probably wouldn't have gone inside. And he also just is like, hey, welcome home, which may or may not be significant. And Isaiah instantly starts telling stories to drive home the idea of athletes often being performers more than players, and it's all about how you control that image. That back in the day, it was native college students that started utilizing a lot of different trick plays to completely change the game after Roosevelt had to step in and allowed forward passing because so many people were dying. And for that contribution, they became mascots, so don't become a mascot. Bringing us to day one, fun, which is just some casual training, some sports medicine, some mild discomfort while stripping down, and the mention that Isaiah almost killed himself to get back on the field after that major injury. Telling Cam, imagine what I had to do to be the greatest of all time. Already setting up those building blocks for what Cam might have to do. We then get introduced to Isaiah's influencer wife, Elsie. She's Gwyneth Paltrow style with her jade hoo-ha eggs. Dropping another statement that can be taken with varying degrees of intensity. Rambling on before ending with,
transitions of power are never peaceful.
So regardless of what's going on behind the scenes, they're absolutely setting up for a direct conflict between them for the top spot. I know that seems obvious, but it's just how it continues building up for like how serious that's gonna be. Again, I was still sticking to the weird cult stuff at this point because Isaiah apparently saves his own blood for little boosts on his off days and offers Cam some as well, which he turns down, but then whatever Marco the medic gives him absolutely looks like blood. Oh man, not more blood magic. Baby, we'll see. As an aside, Cam's in an ice bath here, and it is the fakest ice I've ever seen in my entire life, and it really it just distracted me so much. And then suddenly he's getting yanked out of the water with the t-shirt on for day 2, the poise. Which in football is about maintaining focus, composure, and psychological readiness, so we're probably gonna amp things up here a little bit. They go for a desert run where Isaiah seems to have fitness levels way outside what he should at his age, while Cam is collapsing, puking, and has a hallucination. Getting bashed in the head by the Savior's mascot, who is apparently called Tinsel Larry, which is incredible. And at this point, it's hard to say if this is the result of dehydration, the blow to the head, or whatever he's been injected with. Because whatever that is does seem a little bit magic. Marco injects him again at the compound, and it's like an instant adrenaline reaction. He's just instantly fine to play. And this is probably my favorite scene of the movie. What starts as a basic passing drill turns into a bloodbath when one of Isaiah's guys gets bashed in the face by a football machine at increasing speeds every time a throw fails to land. Instant escalation, and I feel like that makes it so hard for the rest of the movie to feel like it has the same weight. Like I really do think we needed more of these like direct football scenes compared to what we do end up getting. Obviously this freaks Cam out. He starts to panic, starts yelling at the catchers, blaming them for messing up until the intended lesson sticks. That everything lives and dies with the quarterback. If they're not catching, he's not throwing right. That's the trade-off for getting all the glory, you get the blame too. Good lesson, concerning way to teach it, and another thing that really drives home this idea of like the godlike status of Isaiah is that this guy is happy that he got to be used as a target. Even thinks it's funny how freaked out Cam got.
Did we get you?
The point is though, all these guys are willing to sacrifice their well-being to make Isaiah better, which feels accurate to a lot of players' experience, I'm sure, where it does become some of their jobs to just prop up the star players all in service of that greatness, oftentimes sacrificing their own health and well-being on the field. This sends us into another trippy scene. They put him into a hyperbaric chamber and just increase the pressure until he's freaking out, bashing his head. They're playing like a message from his mom in the background as it gets more and more intense, messing with his head before cutting to day 3, leadership. Very important for the QB to have that, I imagine. And even though we just saw him bashing his head into the side of a window, he's just smiling up a storm, getting another injection. And today they're playing a real match. He's got a linebacker helmet on, which reduces his visibility, and they are not going easy on him, giving us a fun little inverted vision peek at his skull stitches as he sustains more blows, with Isaiah getting really fucking weird.
This ain't no game. This is everything.
But it actually works. Cam just goes in for a full head bash to stop the tackle, even though that's really not good for the concussion. Honestly, at some points, this movie just seems like it's the story of a guy being manipulated into giving himself severe CTE and brain damage. But no, this is genuine. Isaiah really wants the commitment. He wants the intensity. He needs Cam to prove that he's willing to put it all on the line. Some cool visuals here, starting to look like a Mortal Kombat finisher in this like X-ray inversion as the guy he hit is just like broken on the ground. As the rest of the team comes over and starts singing around his gurgling body, it's just very, very weird, very culty, very you know. I really would have loved more build up around this scene, more moments of this football, but that would have taken away from the hallucinations we need to cut to. This time we've got Cam walking through a hall, overrun by paparazzi that aren't there, suffocated by a bag the way celebrities may often be suffocated by the media. In the screenplay, these transition hallucination-like scenes were played out by a one-horned goat progressively getting more and more injured in the desert. More directly tying into that original title, the screenplay also really stresses that the Isaiah character is always watching and listening. If you use the landline he has, he's on the other end. If you're having a conversation, he's watching it happen. And that's what I feel is missing here. Like when Cam first gets to the compound in the screenplay, his driver is like praying and I think holding a rosary and is like, I'm never gonna see you again, after saying that he's the only person who drives in and out of the compound, which is kind of immediately implying that they don't expect Cam to be leaving. Then the medic guy, Marco, keeps trying to warn him about different things and telling him not to use the landline, presumably because he knows everything's being listened to. On the other hand, definitely trying to warn Cam about something something that he just can't overtly say out loud. So there's some definite omissions from the screenplay to the movie that I would have liked to see, but either way, at this point, Cam's starting to bug out a bit, probably worried that he's sustaining some severe permanent brain damage. He's worried about the general vibe of the situation he's in. But when he tries reaching out to his brother, he's just not taking it seriously. This is the chance of a lifetime after all. But even though he's weirded out when drunk Marco comes in and starts alluding to things, he doesn't take it as seriously as I thought. It's an interesting conversation where he's kind of lamenting about how his job is supposed to be helping and healing people, but as is so often the case in sports medicine, they're almost just around to loophole serious injuries so people can continue competing, making the point that he's essentially preparing him for slaughter, making the connection from gladiators to football players, and to make good players, you gotta send them to the pit to see who comes out on top. Specifically saying that when two men enter the arena, only one lives. Telling Cam it's unfortunate how well he's prepared him and how talented he is. This man is blatantly being told that he's being groomed for what might be a battle to the death. And even if it's not literal, we're getting entirely too intense. But on he continues past a wall of human faces to the sauna with Isaiah, where as weird as things are, it's another nice little conversation. He tells Cam to find a different way to greatness, that he was in a position where he had no choice but to sacrifice as much as he did to achieve what he got. Leaving Cam with thoughts of what he'll have to sacrifice when the crazy lady fan from outside crawls from under the bench. She was just spying on them from outside, and considering the level of security at the gate, I feel like she must have been let in, along with her two little weirdo lackey things. But she is here to kill Cam so he can't replace her god. Cam then almost chokes her to death in self-defense before Isaiah comes in with the killing blow and then kisses her on the way down before slamming her into a wall, locking the other little weirdos in there with her. And this is where the movie probably started taking the negative point of no return for me. I don't think anything past this point reaches some of the heights we had early on. Again, big finale, but I think we could have been better. Because honestly, why are you still here, Cam? Why are you just chilling by the hot water pool with Isaiah's wife and her friends while Marco mops up blood? Believing Elsie when she says that this kind of stuff is just normal when you reach a certain level of fame. Totally fine that someone was killed and the cops weren't called. Again, the kind of thing that's going to work for some people, but it's starting to venture into a type of surreal that maybe I'm not always a fan of. This is where the movie really loses it for me until maybe the final scene. We get this moment of Isaiah messing with him when he wakes up the next morning, asking if Cam slept with his wife, pointing a gun in his face before he starts to fillet said gun. Tries to turn it into a lesson about not giving a fuck about hurting people, otherwise you just can't be the head of a franchise if you give a fuck. It's also weird, especially now that someone was seemingly killed the day before and now there's a gun in your face and you're still here. I guess that's why day 4 is resilience. Because if it was self-preservation day, the movie would be over. Because today seems to be shooting range day, because yeah, let's go shoot some higher caliber weapons with a guy who seems to be losing his mind. Especially when Isaiah's just being weird, pretending he doesn't know what Cam's talking about when he mentions the woman from the day before he's like, oh yeah, the woman who broke into my house, that woman. The one I launched into a wall? Again, just to slide into more comments from Isaiah for Cam to just ignore. He starts making a wager with Cam that if he hits the shot, he'll give him whatever he wants monetary-wise. Any house, any car, anything at all. But if he misses the shot, Isaiah will take his youth. I'm sorry, that's so menacing. What do you think that means, Cam? Why not ask for some elaboration here, Cam? And instead of being really weirded out by this, Cam just gets playful with it. He says he likes to earn the things he has, which will be important going forward, but then makes a little joke about it by being like, hey, if I miss the shot, maybe I'll let you keep starting quarterback. I'm sorry, this man had a gun in your face an hour ago accusing you of cheating with his wife. Even if he was joking, that's insane behavior, so now you're joking and he clearly does not find it funny. Now he does land the shot, but it seems like it's a real person inside a mascot outfit. I assumed it was the body of the woman from the day before, but when it zooms in on it out in the desert, it looks like it's moving a little bit, so maybe she was still alive and just clinging to the ends of her life, but who knows? It will not matter. This moment will never come back around and we're immediately kicked into day 5, Vision, which is essentially a media training day with voiceover of Isaiah talking about ancient tribes feeding young boys the blood of warriors to pass their spirits on. The whole movie has been Cam getting injected with what looks like blood, and we know Isaiah stores his own blood and was offering it up. So yeah, the signs are just continuing to point to some kind of cult power passing down from generation to generation type thing. Isaiah does just try to turn this into another parable about football being the same thing, and that for Cam to take on that greatness, he needs to survive the death of his old self. Interesting thing here is when Cam Cam starts talking about what fully locked him in on football. He was actually planning to quit before his dad died. Something that really broke his dad's heart because that was clearly something he wanted his son to do since birth, I assume. But then after the dad passed, the only place that the loss didn't feel real was when he was on the field, so he just rededicated himself to the game to avoid ever actually having to deal with those emotions. Before pulling back to reveal that they had him set up like the Last Supper, they are really just driving home those illusions at every step. And I guess that was the last step of this program because he gets invited to a party with the Savior's owners where they apparently do weird rituals. Cam, run! Cam, run! Dude, even Marco, the medic guy's telling him to run. Which actually gets us back on track with the script a little bit, where Marco was constantly trying to get him to dip just a little later in the runtime. But too late, I guess. On he goes to meet the owners and partake in some sacrament, which seems to instantly set something off in Isaiah back at the house. We then just get a bunch of trippy party imagery, Cam puking, Elsie's seemingly cutting off Marco's head before we cross into day 6, sacrifice. And I'm sure they don't just mean Marco here. Cam wakes up in a bed of ice being given Isaiah's blood, dosing himself again with what I assume is some concentrated blood syringe juice, insane visuals of his innards just popping to life. He's ready to go. Leading into what is literally a gladiator match when Cam plans to bash Isaiah's head in with an award. When he comes across him, the tapes that Isaiah's been watching are really just Old Glory moments. The ceiling filled with cheering fans, just like a gladiator arena with people in the stands, which I suppose is also very similar to a football arena. So yeah, this is a literal battle to the death as the doors donned with the alchemy sign for the Philosopher's Stone swing shut. The sign of eternal life. And in this situation, the substance to create eternal life is the blood of him. Passed down from mentor to mentor, injecting blood to pass on the greatness through the ages. Every generation has a him. So yeah, if you voted for weird ritual cult shit early on, you are the winner. If you guessed body swap, I'm so sorry, you are wrong. It's just the piece of them that is the greatness lives on through someone every new generation. And Cam's gotta be willing to kill Isaiah to take it because there can only be one. Otherwise, it would be called them. Which rounds us right back to Cam saying that he likes to earn the things he has. He's actually pretty put off by all this, not just for the insanity of everything he's been put through, but he really wants to earn his glory, not have it handed to him. Even though he doesn't seem to want it, he still comes out on top because regardless, this was still a kill or be killed situation. Some of the visuals here start to feel like a deleted scene from Aggro Drift, which I do not necessarily recommend watching. Definitely implemented cooler here, but the whole thing is really just this spectacle of brutality for entertainment and how that's reflected through the ages of our culture. With the final word between them being Cam asking what the opposite of a savior is, with his answer being a mascot. The one thing Isaiah told Cam to never be, but essentially what he let himself become for the glory, a puppet for some rich weirdos. Do you really have the glory and power you think you do if everything in your life is beholden to someone else? Again, it's one of those moments I like what it's saying, but I think the scene came about entirely too abruptly, which it just the movie just feels very dissatisfying once it hits this point. I think it both needed to use the runtime better and probably give itself a little bit more time to work with. But whatever, Cam wanders his way through the tunnel where a bunch of faceless cheerleaders line the way to a table with people wearing animal masks with a contract waiting in front of him, which he turns down. Again, he really means it when he says he wants to earn things. Which obviously sets them off, and they reveal that they've been grooming him since birth for this. That his dad made a deal with the owner, they hit him in the head to really give him a reason to feel desperate enough to make it in the league to go along with whatever weird shit Isaiah was doing. It also seems like they killed his father when he said he wanted to quit to push him back into it out of guilt, and honestly, maybe the dad didn't know, but I also would believe that the dad was absolutely on board with this to make sure his son got all the things that he wanted for his son. Then they start threatening to kill his family in a way that feels as casual as somebody being like, I'm gonna steal your lunch money. And finally, after all the insanity, Cam is done and just starts killing them all. Goes completely off the rails, he's throwing swords, he's punting heads, before his manager ends up sacrificed to whatever ancient power is at the heart of this because they failed to pass it along to the next person. All while those cheerleaders just keep doing their things as fighter jets go overhead releasing a US flag colored stream of smoke. I only don't think this is the best ending for the movie they set up. It at least makes things interesting for the finale. It is fun in isolation. I like that he made the decision to make it on his own, that the real sacrifice would not be taking the cheat code to glory. But sadly, this movie just loses so much in the third act. I was at least interested and pulled in, and a lot of what was happening in the first half of the movie outside of some of the very abrupt scene switches and just not always being a fan of how certain trippy scenes end up feeling. There was at least some kind of interest there that felt like it was playing into a bigger thing, and I feel like it really loses it in the second half. How in depth they go with certain statements and allegories without really getting into the weeds of the subject matter they're bringing to screen. I'm always a fan of anything that points out how harmful fan culture can be and how so many athletes just get locked into these weird contracts to perform harm, the level of violence that's encouraged, not just sacrificing their bodies, but the level of sustained brain injuries is absurd. I do kind of wish maybe they touched on that a little bit more, but I get it. He starts getting the blood. It starts healing all those problems. You know, there's another movie to be told on the CTE side of things. It was included enough to work here. The literal worship of these individuals while pointing out that there's always some rich asshole on the other side and that you were only as useful as your performance output. So I think the movie's doing a lot of interesting things. It can just kind of come down to how Cam reacts to certain instances and the way they just choose to push forward that story. I think the movie needed a lot more on-the-field training moments to really show that brutality setting in within Cam and less steamy trip outs. You can still have the visually cool trip outs. They do fit here, but it's just like nothing ever gets as interesting as like that first scene with the guy just getting beamed in the head with the football. I know the original screenplay does bring up the question of why Isaiah would want to be training his replacement, and like a lot of people around him being like, this seems like some kind of trap to get you out of the way or just to like run you off somehow. I think it would have been interesting to look into that a little bit because I think Cam would question that, but also see this as the last lifeline to make it to this thing that he wants so he can atone for disappointing his dad before his death. However, I did mention that had it been executed correctly, the original ending could have been better in terms of how they played this movie out. Like, I think they still would have had to change some of it to fit the movie, but it's a more somber ending. It's still a weird religious cult thing with powers being passed on, but it's less a battle and more of a monkey paw curse. Something that Isaiah is kind of desperate to get rid of, but still has to put Cam through all these tests and mind tricks to prove that he's able to take it. And if Cam turns it down, Isaiah has to keep going. He'll have to keep sacrificing every other aspect of his life until he can get someone else to take it on. However, in the screenplay, this is all happening after Cam severely snaps his arm, and it's a career-ending injury just like the one Isaiah had. So if he wants to play, if he wants to do this thing he's been working his entire life for, he essentially has no choice but to take the deal, so he does. The original script ends with Isaiah out with his family, finally showing his age, getting to eat pizza while Cam's on TV, defeated look in his eyes as the reality of his life has clearly started to sink in despite the outward glory. To be a trick pony for millions of people around the world who will never be satisfied. A much more downer ending, and Cam's like a lot more sketched out throughout the runtime of that script than he ends up being in the movie, which I feel like definitely plays into that psychological beatdown that he gets to towards the end. So I think there was a way to fuse that kind of ending into something where you have someone who's always been on top realizing that it's probably their time to be replaced, to lose that thing that made up so much of their life and identity, and why you might fight against that so strongly. Because so much of sports and fame is just fighting to maintain that relevance. A concept that the movie Lurker explores in a way that maybe I prefer a little bit more. The absurd ending does at least make it an entertaining send-off when the third act really just started to lose me entirely. Like really everything from the sauna on, I was like, okay, we got to tighten it up or give things more breathing room so events make sense. Like Buddy threatens you with a gun and you start making jokes about taking his job the same day. That's bold. Like I really just don't know how many times someone would have weird shit said to them by multiple different people and still just kind of be like, oh, word, we're gonna continue on. I get that he's concerned that some of the discomfort is definitely in his head, but you know, some of the weirdest stuff was not. And I get that this was kind of the last chance to achieve the goal, so he'd probably put up with a lot more, but I think they could have just done a better job showing that struggle outside the brief phone call that he has with his brother. But that's him. Let me know what you're thinking down below. Again, definitely didn't think this was as bad as some people seem to. I think I'm like kind of very much, it's just right in the middle for me, right? Like if it's a 5-star rating, I'm gonna give it like a 2.5, somewhere around there. But it does just end up feeling more disappointing to me than anything, which sometimes is the biggest bummer of them all. But let me know what you guys are thinking down below. Did you catch him? Did you like it? Did you love it? Did you hate it? Do you have some other insights that maybe I don't have? I am really not big into football. I did read up on it. I'm aware of football culture and I understand how these different things play in and the religious nature and how like fanatical people get with it. But if there's some really fun nuance that I missed, feel free to toss it in here. I'd love to hear it. But that's gonna do it for the video. Thank you all so much for watching. Thanks as always to my Patreon supporters and YouTube channel members, and to Incogni for coming back to the channel. All my other social medias are listed down below if you want to check those out. I hope you're having a fantastic day. I'm mostly okay, and we'll catch you all later.